Okay, just get right into it.
Yeah. Okay. Hello.
Sick.
We're gonna start off with December 13th, 2002. Something that's in the horizon for us, hopefully.
December 13th.
Parenthood. No, not the date. The title.
I hope there are many more December 13th.
I guess the date too. Parenthood as privilege. Okay. Will you be my parent?
Only if you're mine too.
Okay. That might be strange. Yeah. But okay, ready? Yesterday, so this is December 12th, 2002.
Wait, did you do this because it's Mother's Day?
No.
That's just a happy coincidence.
Happy coincidence.
Sick.
Okay, so yesterday, Education Secretary Charles Clark announced that in future, head teachers who request it will be given powers to fine parents whose children consistently play truants from school. Discipline, he said, begins at home. The announcement will spark controversy, but it did something important, namely to raise the question, what are the responsibilities of parents? Today in the West, we're engaged in an experiment that's never been tried before, a world where marriage is optional, stable families increasingly rare, and where almost all the responsibilities of parenthood can be delegated away. Education to schools, law enforcement to the police, and care to childminders or welfare agencies. In America, the average child spends 4 hours a day watching television. And this was 20 years ago. And only 40 minutes a week talking to its parents. In the words of Robert Reich, I don't know how to say his name.
That's okay.
What? Yeah?
That's okay.
the CH and the chet always get me. The family, like the business corporation, is being downsized and outsourced. Rarely has parenthood been surrounded by so much confusion or held in such low esteem. And that's bad news. One of the most beautiful things the Hebrew Bible gave the world was the idea that God isn't just a power, but also a parent. We call him our Father, or, as God said through the prophet Isaiah, like one whom his mother comforts, so will I comfort you. I love the comment of one new mother who said, since I've become a parent, I can relate much more closely to God. Now I know what it's like to create something you cannot control. And in the one verse in the entire Bible, which explains why God chose Abraham to be the founder of a new faith, it says, I've chosen him so that he will teach his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord, doing what is right and just. What made Abraham and Sarah special in God's eyes was simply that they understood the responsibilities of parenthood. Without the help of parents, even the best school and the finest teachers may fail. Even the most gifted child may face emotional difficulties. I know that what I most loved about my parents was that gave they us, their children, time. When we did well, we knew we were giving them pride. There is no more awesome responsibility than bringing new life into the world. And having done so, we can't just walk away and leave the rest to others. It isn't just discipline, but much else besides that begins at home, which is why we have to rediscover the truth that parenthood isn't a burden, but the greatest privilege at all.
Okay, so I have two things to say, initial thoughts. The 40 minutes a week, you said, right? Talking to their parents?
Yes.
How much time do you spend talking to your parents? Just out of curiosity.
I think the whole Shabbat thing raises that for Jewish families.
Yeah.
He's looking at America as a whole.
Okay.
Personally, I think it's more, but average, I think that makes sense.
Do you do like a meal a day with your family or anything? Or you kind of just eat whenever you eat?
Actually, during the past year, we started doing maybe like most days we have a meal all together. Mm-hmm. If I'm like during tests, I may just bring my food up and continue what I have to do. But usually, yeah. So
we usually try and do dinner together. Like my dad comes back from work and we eat kind of late, whatever. Really, I'm the one who kind of messes that up when I'm out working or gallivanting or whatever. But there was a study done that like having a meal with your family, once a day, once a week, whatever, significantly lowers your chances of doing drugs or being involved in crime, which is really interesting. Yeah, so that is a really important thing, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I just found the study. but yeah, that just made me think of something. Yeah, so I think that study may have been done by a Harvard something. I don't know. That's what I found. But it reminds me of another Harvard study, the I don't remember what it's called, but it's a Harvard grant study. I don't know. It's a long running study about what makes someone happy. And the key idea after following people for 80 years was your relationships and how they are, not with your family, with your friends, with your parents. And I think these two studies kind of bounce off each other, that the meal time is like, you can have that, just spending one meal together a day, you have, I don't know, 2-3 hours with your parents a week, which is quadruple the national average at this point.
Which is like insane.
Yeah. I don't know what the average is right now. Again, that was 20 years ago, but I can't imagine it would be better.
Yeah. I watched the movie first called Into the Wild, about this guy named Chris McCandless, and he goes wandering off into Alaska, and then he dies. Unfortunately, it hit hard. It hit really hard when I saw the movie. Whatever, that's not important. But in the book, the author talks about how people like that kind of like, they're very happy just like with themselves. They're content with the beauty of the world and that alone. But they're all also like social creatures. They may go out into the wilderness for 6 months, 2 years, or whatever at a time. But each one of these like 6 people who all died in the wilderness, horribly, they all would like come back every once in a while just to like share that human connection. And Chris McCandless, in his journal, when he was like inches from death, at least in the movie, I haven't gotten to the end of the book yet, but he said that it like, all the experiences in the world aren't worth anything if you have nothing to share with, like no one to share them with. And that's, I think, part of that whole family friends relationship thing is that sharing, and also the receiving. Like exactly what we're doing right now. We're sharing.
Yeah.
I'm sharing my thoughts with you. You're sharing your thoughts with me, and I'm receiving, reciprocating. And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Fun stuff. Did you have something else you were gonna say? I feel like you did.
I think, I don't know. I think we hit some of the good points. Like, yeah, I think a lot of communal relationship is about sharing, whether it be giving or receiving, and the different levels of that. Like, I remember in spots, we were, I don't know if you were in my group, but we were talking about how one of the highest levels is receiving in order to give. And Rav Charnoff even maybe I don't know if I'm allowed to call. I guess I'll call him out. Whatever. He gave a story. He told a story about how someone very fine. I'll be. I don't want to call him out too. So it's not him, but someone very close to him got him a birthday present, like a genuine birthday present that was a water bottle. And just because things were crazy at that time, all they could do was a water bottle, and how what he had the chance to receive in order to give, to show his appreciation for what he was given. Through his receiving something that may not actually mean much, he can give so much more just based on how he composes himself through that. Yeah.
There's so much I could say about that. Oh my goodness. Have you read Strive for Truth at all? So one of the first few sections is about love and giving and whatever. And basically, he says that through giving, he asked the question at the beginning of this chapter, does giving come from loving, or does loving come from giving? So what do you think?
Second one.
So that's the answer he comes to, which is really, really cool. Like, through giving to someone, you actually build a deeper connection to them. But also, like you were saying, the receiving also is a form of giving. And sometimes that's just the best thing you can do. And it's so cool to see like both ends of it, the giving and the receiving, not the taking, but the giving and the receiving are both giving. and they both build feelings of love and compassion. It's just so cool and happy and like,
Yeah.
cool.
I'll call out Ralph Charnoff again. And basically, I guess it's talking about parenthood. So I'll tell you one thing you said about marriage and giving.
Mhm.
He said, like, if you're like thinking about marrying someone, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you willing to give and give and give to this person till the end of time?
Mhm.
Because if the answer is yes, then you will make it that far. Because it's bonds are built on giving.
Mhm. So I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Rabbi Sachs actually, or maybe it was Rav Charnoff again in a different shirt. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like you know what I'm about to say.
No, go.
Okay. So he said he had a student, whoever it was, had a student who asked, if you're only giving, right? If you're in this relationship and you're giving and giving and giving, and all you're doing is giving, eventually you're gonna burn out, right? Oh, I feel like it's a Rav Machlis thing. That's what it was. It was Rav Machlis or Henny Machlis, one of the two. And he responded, yeah, but in a good, loving relationship, your spouse is also giving and giving and giving. It's an endless cycle of giving, and you're both just feeding each other that positivity. And when it's that perfect cycle and it works well, neither one of you will run out of the giving. I thought that was really cool.
I think this is good. I think I'm gonna move on to the next one now.
Okay, wait, I have one more thing.
Go for it.
Okay. So the other part about you said the woman, she understands more how God felt. Reminded me of a song. There's a song called Appalachian Wine by 11D7. It's pretty good. It's a pretty awesome song.
Okay.
And then so basically God creates the elements. Mother Earth and Father Time are the first beings, whatever. And so one day they ask God and they're like, what's it like to be up there all alone? Or to be, the Father? And he sends them two kids. What is it? Fire and wind. And they basically just kind of like raise chaos and like have all these questions that they don't have answers to. And they go back to God and they're like, dude, how do you do this? And then God's like, yeah, that's what it was like to be me. There's a little taste. It's not the exact lyrics, but that was the idea. But it's really interesting. Like, what perspective does the song really have? How much, whatever. But it's an interesting idea to think about, the chaos and the lack of answers, but still the endless love.
That reminded me of something else.
Yes, let's hear it.
I'm just gonna tease it.
No, say as much as you want to say.
No, it's okay.
Say what you need to say.
A Letter in the Scroll, that book by Rabbi Sachs, he talks about the midrash called "A Palace on Fire." And to sum it up, basically, very quickly, there's this midrash that's very confusing in how we see a palace, how Abraham saw a palace on fire. And he's like, there's this palace, is there no one home to take care of it? And then the thing is, there is someone home, but who is it? It's God. So that's very basic. The question is, what is this palace doing on fire? And you have two interpretations. Either, and this brings about either the world is all good because there is a God, and so the palace on fire is actually good and we just don't understand it. Or there is no good and there is no God and the palace is burning down. But then we have the Judaic approach where no, we have this beautiful, beautiful palace that we lit on fire. And God's not going to put it out because that's not his job. We're supposed to be partners in the work of creation. We lit the fire and he's calling on us to put it out. And what you said just reminded me of how the chaos and whatever, just, little connections.
Talks about that in To Heal a Fractured World too.
Yes.
Same idea. He doesn't talk about the palace, but he talks about that idea. Divine justice and human justice. which is a whole other conversation that we can
Do that next time.
Next time, right?
I'll read the next one now,
Okay.
which I thought
Yeah,
was
let's
cool.
do it.
Peace as Paradox, September 13th, 2002. Another date in our horizon, September 13th. Okay, so in January this year, I stood at ground zero, awed by the sheer scale of the destruction, moved by the messages from those who lost family or friends. I was there together with leaders of all the world's great faiths. The Archbishop of Canterbury said a prayer, so did a Muslim imam. The chief rabbi of Israel read a reflection. A Hindu sprinkled holy water from the Ganges, and I was struck by the sheer dissonance between this coming together of faiths and peace and the terrible religious extremism of those who planned and carried out the attack. Religion, I suddenly realized, is like fire. It warms, but it also burns, and we are the guardians of the flame. Religion, far from dying, remains a significant factor in conflict zones throughout the world. Northern Ireland, the Balkans, the Middle East, Kashmir. Because where the 20th century was about the politics of ideology, the 21st century is about the politics of identity. Who am I and to which side do I belong? And to those questions, the great religions are our oldest and deepest answer. The trouble is that the politics of identity is inherently divisive because by creating an us, it also creates a them. The people not like us. The unredeemed, the infidel, those outside our circle of belonging, which is why peace is so hard across the great divide of different faiths. Peace is a paradox. Almost all the great religions praise it and decry conflict and war. Yet those who show courage in battle are celebrated, while those who take risks for peace are often assassinated. Lincoln, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Anwar Sadat, and Yitzhak Rabin. War speaks to our sense of identity. There's an us and a them, and no possibility of confusing the two. But peace involves a profound crisis of identity. When enemies shake hands, who is now the us and who the them? That is why the pursuit of peace can sometimes seem like a kind of betrayal. Which is why, as this century unfolds, we're going to need not just military strength, but also spiritual courage. To reach out, a hand of friendship across boundaries, to recognize the integrity of ways of life unlike our own, to listen to other people's stories, and to see the trace of God in the face of a stranger. God has made many faiths, but only one world in which we live together. And it's getting smaller all the time. That's that.
Okay. Have you heard of Dr. Seuss?
I have.
The Sneetches?
Yes, the stars?
The stars, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. My friend, I guess we should say what it is, right? The ones have the stars and the other ones don't have the stars. And the ones with the stars are like, we're better than the ones without the stars. And so this guy comes to town and he tells the ones without the stars that you can give them stars in their bellies. And they're like, sick, let's do it. And then as they're doing that, he goes and he tells the other Sneetches, the ones with the stars, that he can remove their stars. So they're not like the ones with the stars who are less than them. And a whole bunch of stuff happens and everyone gets really confused. No one knows who was originally the stars and who wasn't. And, who's better and who's not. And, their whole sense of us and them is totally destroyed. Meanwhile, this guy who came to town and messed everything up is making a ton of money.
Yeah.
Which I totally forgot about while I was thinking. And then it's an important part. It's an important part of the story.
Us and them.
Someone's always making money off of the us and them. The war dogs, people selling the guns, and they don't care what side they're on. They're just there to make a quick buck. Yeah, it's a cool story. Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, he talks about it in a lot of his other books. The us and especially in his newer books, in Morality, this is like the entire book about us and them. How in Not in God's Name, he talks about it, how we create groups because it makes us feel strong. We survive in groups. But when it comes to bringing people together, it scares us. It's scary. Like we want peace, but when we're trying to get it, that's when people get shot. Not in war, but in like Lincoln and Gandhi, as he was saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, peace. I've never thought about peace like that before. I thought it was very cool the way you put it, how
Mhm.
we want peace, yet we feel so proud in wartime.
Yeah. That's when the patriotism really comes to, Rosie the Riveter and Uncle Sam and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Like in history classes, when you learn about pros and cons in a war, like, oh, they have better weapons, they have better this. These people have stronger unity. They have stronger reasons to be fighting because they're defending themselves. Like that's a reason, that's a pro. Just that
Yeah.
feeling of unity brings
The
people to a higher
nationality,
level
yeah.
in war.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Super, super interesting. Speaking of war, Yom Yerushalayim is today.
Yeah, it is.
Too bad we're not in Israel.
Yeah. Next month though, we're going to
Next
Israel.
month. I'm so
Just,
excited.
just one thing that I remembered from morality, Jonathan Haidt, he's a ethical, he writes ideas on ethics for the New York Times. He worked with Rabbi Sachs a bit.
Sick.
This idea of us and them, the in-group and the out-group, he describes as this, that the tendency for humans to form groups, it binds us and it blinds us. It binds us to each other and it blinds us to those not like us. And on like today, it's one of the key issues of today, like within America itself, just the grouping, the radicalizing of different groups against each other, and how people I think after the 2016 election, 15% of people reported that they are no longer talking to a family member because of that election.
Yeah.
Just like the idea of us and them, it brings people apart.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you stop, like, not that you stopped talking to, I guess, but like it put a strain on a relationship
I think so,
the
yeah.
election?
Yeah.
Was it me?
No. Okay, you got me, yeah.
Yeah, there's someone I was talking to. And then she found out who I was voting for. I was like, okay, bye. It's like, okay, bye. And we just like stopped talking.
Yeah,
And that was that.
it's a difficult situation. Like
Yeah.
did you watch The Social Dilemma? It's
No.
very good. Basically, they said
You told me about it.
they talk about a few different things and how the whole internet isn't helping this. How if you track the median viewpoints of the right and the left for the past 20
we
years,
talked about this a while ago. Yeah.
and we're the furthest we've ever been from each side. So yeah, and basically in this chapter, he's calling for something different. And he wrote this 20 years ago. So he was calling for something different when we were here. It's
polarization.
Yeah, he's saying that groups bring us together, but on a small scale, and that's not the goal. If you want to be a small scale group, that was hunting and gathering. That's our little groups that we're forming today. But if you want something big, if you want to bring the world together, you gotta shake that off and find something new. And I think that's what he's going for.
Which is
chapter.
Interesting because when we talk about change, right? You say change starts small and gets bigger. First, you change yourself, then your family, then your neighborhood, then your the broader community, and the state, the country, and whatever. And I think the problem is when you stop expanding your change, or when you run into a wall, right? If you want to change the world, and you have to start small, but then you can't quit halfway. When you focus just on your community, it sounds like that's when you get into trouble and you kind of get to where we were talking about.
Go big.
What?
Of course, everyone has their own personal thing that they could do, but sometimes a community may be where someone has their biggest impact. But if we have the choice to keep going, I think that's the thing we got to do.